Well, welcome again, everyone. My name is Shaloma, but I prefer to be called Lo because I'm tired of people butchering my name, so Lo is okay by me. But if you want to attempt it, Shaloma is cool too. Welcome, and thank you for joining Women of Color in Cannabis. Like I said, I am one of the founders of Women of Color in Cannabis. Our other founder is Jervon in the back, and then we have a third partner named Patricia, and she'll be joining us shortly. So today we're here to talk about careers in cannabis. We've put together a wonderful panel that do a variety of things in the space. So this is your opportunity to learn about the different options that exist outside of the dispensary, the farm operations that everyone talks about. They're here to cover all the other ancillary businesses as well. Once again, if you do have a question, if you want, you can raise your hand and ask your question. But if you are a bit nervous, you can submit your question on our Instagram via DM. So that's underscore WOCC, underscore WOCC. If I'm talking too fast or too low, just let me know. I can pump it up and I can slow it down. If you can't see our speakers or hear our speakers, just let us know. Okay? So we're going to start with a simple introduction. We're going to start with Rosemary, a woman of color in cannabis, and she's going to tell us all about her law practice. Okay.
Wonderful. Hello, my name is Rosemary Moyeno Matos. I'm an attorney, a founding partner at Moyeno Gonzalez and Associates. First, I would like to thank Women of Color in Cannabis for inviting me to speak on this panel. But with respect to my area of expertise in the cannabis world, my partner and I started a firm earlier this year, focused primarily on representing minorities and startups in cannabis.
Just one moment. This is her lovely partner in the front. So if you guys have questions,
Jessica.
You can see both Jessica or Rosemary.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when Jessica and I partnered together earlier this year, we set about trying to create an atmosphere where minorities particularly, but just anyone who's looking to start up in this business can get a leg up. One of the biggest barriers for people trying to get into this business is trying to secure services because they're so expensive, legal being one of them. And so what we do for our clients is offer reduced rates for startups and minorities so that they have a fighting chance of getting their foot in the door.
Thank you. Next we have Vince.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today.
problem.
I appreciate it. My name is Vince. I started my cannabis journey about 12 years ago. I moved to San Francisco and was growing cannabis and selling to dispensaries. Shortly thereafter, I made it to Colorado and was managing a number of dispensaries and helped people, getting approved for licenses and so forth. During that time, I fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the plant, and it was more than just another means of making money. I found that cannabis really helped a lot of the patients that I worked with as far as any kind of medical ailments. My mother is a severe Crohn's disease patient, and cannabis is really the only thing that allows her to eat even a little bit. I also have a gut disease myself, and it's something that I help use to supplement other than taking any kind of pharmaceutical drugs and stuff like that. I own a CBD remedy, which is a tincture company. I compound all of my tinctures, I label them, I shrink wrap them. I'm the guy who sells them. It's all me. But yeah, that's a quick snapshot of my background and what I do, but I'll answer any questions you guys have.
We have a variety of questions that we put together to kind of cover what we think everyone's questions might be. So we'll ask about 2 questions per panelist, but if we haven't covered what you might be interested in, that's when you'll let us know via DM or just by raising your hand. Okay, next.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Carl Burwell. I'm the founder and CEO of Green Passion Industries. We're a multi-diversified cannabis company, management company. We focus on education and retail. Our big emphasis and our passion is the patients and the end users and the communities knowing exactly what this plant can do, knowing its benefits, its healing benefits, its therapeutic benefits, and its adult use benefits, and making sure that the patients and the consumers know that they are consuming the best products for them. There's a lot of different products out on the market, and unless you've done your research and you spend the time to really look through each one of those companies, you don't really know what you're ingesting or consuming in your body. So our goal is to make sure we educate the community to know what kind of cannabis products are out there and what options are available to them, and then open up the avenues so that they have a place to safely access and purchase these products. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is St. Michael. Hi. I own Supreme Green Cuisine. We are a culinary company that caters. We also make products as far as honey, so we also make stuck honey. My labor of love is actually the honey because I use it medicinally, and I think it's one of the best transfers for medicine, any type of herb or oil in general. So it's something that I just stay focused in. And I make sure that the people that are consuming and eating with us understand what they're consuming and understand milligrams and things like that, but we'll get into that, I'm pretty sure. So in a nutshell, I mean, Supreme Green Cuisine offers great nutrition, great consumption, and just responsible company, just responsible community.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about your lobbying?
My what?
Your lobbying.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
As well, thank you, forgot about that. As well, I also work with New York City
Could
Normal.
you speak a little louder? Someone's in the back is having a little trouble.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. As well, I work with New York City Normal, and what we do is we go lobbying every month when session is in for New York City and for New York State, and we basically fight for the fair share for our communities and fair understanding and narrative on cannabis and cannabis laws and taxation. For instance, we have an MRTA that we were trying to get passed last session, that we will get past this session. So hopefully that we'll get it past this session if we can get the right narrative around it. But that takes, again, the community. Thank you guys for being here. And, you know, that's something that I'm greatly involved in besides Supreme Green.
Okay. So our first question for our panelists would be, what would you say is the largest barrier you faced when entering the industry? And we can do the opposite order, so you can start saying. So the largest barrier to getting into the legal cannabis industry?
Again, so like New York is not legal as far as recreational. When it comes to medicinal, it's a very difficult game to get into if you're just a individual like myself coming up, because you have to get the proper team behind you that's going to get all of the testing done correctly, because you're going against or you're going along with corporations that have been doing this for years, that just have all the relationships that you don't have. So I think in my field, as far as honey, and as far as manufacturing honey, it's been a little difficult, but we'll get to the process. We just have to kind of just get into the legality part and get it clear. But for New York, like, that's just been our biggest obstacle for me. Like, can't really move anything because, I mean, can't sell THC.
Okay. Carl?
And really to piggyback off of that, in our aspect, I would say, you know, that legality, the barrier of knowing where you are operating. You have the cannabis industry. We're based out of New Jersey, so we have a medicinal program. It's not legalized for adult use, and obviously with the Farm Bill that was recently passed, CBD is legal. So knowing what space you're operating in and being able to shift from wanting to work in, you know, the full-fledged THC and cannabis market and maybe not having the capital to work in that market just yet, being able to pivot and focus on CBD brands and that market, and being able to really know where you're working, I think was a big barrier that every company is still trying to get over.
For me, anything that I approach or take on, I like to be as well versed and educate myself as much as possible. Growing up in New Jersey, which is where my business is based out of, but growing up in, you know, on the East Coast here, you know, there really isn't like a robust cannabis program or market or anything like that as of yet. Everything is on the West Coast. So making the decision to actually leave here to go get that knowledge and immerse myself in the culture, in the workspace, and get a true understanding of just the approach in general, what it's like to be in a dispensary, managing people in a dispensary space, the types of folks that want to work in dispensaries and those type of things, just managing those behaviors. It's very, very different than working, you know, in a corporate setting. Some of the things that are allowable and are compliant are not necessarily the case. So I apologize, it's kind of long-winded, but yeah, for me it was just like you make the decision to go get that knowledge. If it's not in an area that you're in, that was a big barrier for me. It's something that I wanted to take on and and really do it well. So.
Thank you. For me personally, I really did not experience any obstacles in just venturing into this space. Prior to entering the cannabis space, I had practiced for 17 years as an environmental attorney, an insurance attorney, and a corporate lawyer, focusing primarily on clients in the nonprofit industry, which were all highly regulated industries. So it was a very easy transition for me personally. I was fortunate enough to be approached by a group last year who applied for 2 licenses in the state of New Jersey for alternative treatment centers, vertical operations. And they approached me because of my corporate background. And it was because of the fact that I had worked in highly regulated industries for so long. It was a very easy transition for me. For my clients, I can tell you, as these gentlemen just said, because this is such a nascent industry, yeah, it's been legalized in Colorado and California for quite some time, the landscape is constantly changing. We're still waiting on legislation to pass. It comes up for vote, it gets tabled. So, there's a lot of things that are still being worked out that constantly cause you to pivot. But primarily, I would say, having represented quite a few startups at this point, money is a big factor because it does take a lot of money to get into this space, and just the nature of the legislation and what's happening and what's changing on any given moment. It's a lot.
Okay, thank you. So our next question will be, what are the 3 most important factors for success in this industry? So we want industry specific. 3 key points that you can recommend to people, not to ensure success because we know nothing is bulletproof or foolproof, but just maybe some best use practices or skill sets that they should be thinking about once they enter.
Sure. So
once again, this way.
So as the attorney on the panel, first and foremost is making sure that you start from the very beginning being legally compliant, because the key to maintaining, to avoiding federal criminal activity is to make sure that you're legally compliant with the laws of your state. So you want to make sure that you start from the very beginning, making sure that you've set up your company right, that you have the proper documentation, that you have contracts that you need. Make sure you have insurance. These are all important things that some people just don't understand that they need, and already they're operating, at a disadvantage. Education, getting to know what's required of your business. Whether it's if you're an ancillary business or if you're plant touching, do you understand everything that's involved in running your particular business? And then I would also say perseverance.
I can second that.
You need a lot of it. So you got to be willing. You got to be willing to work with what you have and just keep going. There's going to be a lot of obstacles thrown in your way. You just got to forge around them.
Well said.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
well said. Yeah.
I refer to those obstacles as brick walls, and there's always a crack in the wall. You just have to find it and exploit it, and each wall is going to be thicker than the next one. So it's just like Rose said, there will be times where whatever you take on in this industry, you may hit a point where it's just like, I don't know if I should even do this anymore. I've already spent X amount of money, haven't seen any return on it. Realistically, you may not seen any return on it for a while, and you still have to push past that. From there, shamelessly self-promoting. Be proud of what it is that you're making, what you're a part of. I'm somebody who cares deeply about every granular detail of what goes into my product, and making sure that, one, it's not going to hurt anyone. If I'm going to use it, I'm sourcing the most natural products I can that have minimal processing to them. But those kind of things are I'm passionate about, and talk about those things. I process in small craft batches. That doesn't necessarily work for everybody. They want to get big batches out there and want to do machine processing, and that's absolutely fine. Shamelessly self-promote what it is that you do and what you care about. That is what is going to carry your product, your brand, whatever it is, forward, and people will appreciate that. Also, any spaces that you'll be working out of. This is going to be kind of a little bit longer answer. I'll try to keep it concise. A big thing that I ran into with finding a place to process my products out of, I went through about 12 different professional kitchens, and there was always a little nuance that made it up so I wasn't able to work out of that space. Talking with any any local townsfolks, and what I mean by that is like any committee people, your mayors and stuff like that. It doesn't hurt for them to know what kind of business you have and what it is that you're trying to do. That all ties into the shamelessly self-promoting. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's the space that I'm trying to work out of. Just do your diligence and be proud of it. You know, and that to me opened up more doors for me, that I was straightforward about what I was doing and wasn't trying to hide anything. I wasn't embarrassed by, you know, the profession that I've been in for several years. I'm very proud of it and speak highly of it. The last one, and this is a little bit more ambiguous. Don't be afraid to spend just a little bit more money to put something a little better out there. You'll run into situations where I could go with this type of packaging or whatever it is. I'm just using a basic example, but it'd be a little bit nicer and may help, you know, the image of my product. Spend a little bit more money. You're going to be spending money anyway. Like, put your best product out there.
Definitely one of the big factors I was going to say is confidence. You have to have confidence to work in this space. You know, almost going to plug into kind of what Vince said when he says don't be afraid to shamelessly plug yourself. You have to be confident about it. People are going to look at you to this day. Now, I've been in this space for about a year and a half, and you know, I'll tell people, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I have my own cannabis company, and some people look at you and their eyes go wide open. Some people don't want to talk to you after that. Don't let that kind of deter you from doing what you want to do. Know what you want to do. Again, right off from what Rose said, perseverance. You have to be persevering in this industry. You're going to have things that knock you down, and you have to push through it. It's almost with any industry, but within this industry, it's there just a little bit more. And due diligence. You have to do your due diligence in this industry. You, like I said before, you know, one of the biggest barriers is not knowing, you know, where you're operating in this space. You know, there's a lot of gray areas. Nothing's really black and white. So do your background checks on the people that you want to work with on your team. Get to know them. Don't just go off of a resume in this industry. This industry, you really need to kind of vibe with those people that you're working with. The reason that my business partner and me decided to get into this industry, we've been best friends for 15 years.
One moment. This is his partner right here in the front. So this is Jonathan. So once again, if you have any questions, Carl and Jonathan.
We've known each other, and you know, I trust him with watching my back. He trusts me. What I lack, he's good in. What he lacks, I'm good in. You need that in your team. So definitely do your due diligence with the people that you want to work with. Don't just go off of, you know, them saying, oh, I've been doing this or that, or I've been growing this long back. That doesn't matter. You really need to vibe with that person.
So thank you guys, because you guys have just said everything that I was thinking and really just made it great. I'm glad that you guys are here with us. So I want to piggyback off of what you were saying, because I was going to say like positive partnerships, and you can only kind of get those from having good discernment. You got to be focused on what you want and how it's going to serve your brand, how you serve your brand, how you serve anything you're doing, because it's not really like yours, like you're a part of it. So the people that are around you have to have that same sentiment, that same understanding, just to say that. So I think your partnerships, you're going to stumble. It's just like walking and talking. You don't have a rule book for it. You don't have a manual for it. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to run into people, but at least you can use your discernment and say, you know what, this doesn't feel right. Vetting people out, there's nothing wrong with vetting people out. It's actually important, because just think about it as your child. You wouldn't want your child around a certain company, and that's important. But then, you know, your child has to grow up, so it needs other influence. It needs positive influence. So just like these brothers right here having a partnership, he can't create this thing on his own without his ideas, and it becomes something else. It becomes, now I can share and have a part of it now, because they've created something. They've made a space for me, you know. And that's the only result I say that we look for to be in any industry, or to just be. When it comes to lobbying, education, figuring out what's going on, keep your finger on the pulse, because there's a lot of, when I go upstate, there's a lot of people saying, well, we're having issues with education, and that's why we don't want to pass it. So there's a lot of hearsay and a lot of miseducation, and the only way we're going to create consistency is by having a concise narrative and having something that we're always going. Oh, so sorry about that. Having a concise narrative, having something that we are all saying at the same time all the time. So if it's like we're going to the left, we're all going to the left, and they understand that, why we're going to the left and our passion behind it. It's not something that we're being forced to do. And that's the beauty of this country, that we have the ability to debate and come to a medium. So when it comes to legislation, educate yourself, partner yourself with the right people. Definitely make mistakes and don't anticipate mistakes, because that's just going to slow your walk down. It's like imagining the child, worrying about their first step and falling. It's impossible. They would never walk. So just go. Just go and don't be afraid. Definitely don't be very mindful on the quality that you're putting into it, because it's for people. You're doing this. If you can't eat it, if you can't put it on your face or on your body, you shouldn't give it to people, period. And definitely have your black and white. You gotta have your black and white locked down. It's most important, because you don't want to have something of beauty that you created out of magic and passion that you can't hold in public, because now you don't have the legalities straightened out. So just the way it kind of came up, I know it starts like with me and creativity and passion, but it really is like, take care of it just the way you got it. Take care of it just the way it came at you, you know. Yeah.
So we're going to ask some industry-specific questions, and we're going to start with Vince. So just to remind you guys, he has a manufacturing company. He does distributing. So as far as being a manufacturer, what is the most difficult point in the process of operating a manufacturing company?
Ooh. Couple of things. There are some pieces of it for my business that are out of my hands. For example, the raw oils that I get. While I do have partnerships with folks from Colorado that I have worked with that process these oils, I'm not there to see how they're made, you know, or how they're put together. I understand how they're made and you know, and trust that they're using a clean process. But once it gets to me and I'm compounding it and making it, I still have to send it out for testing before I can, you know, put it out to market. So even though I do understand that everything is on the up and up and they're not, you know, using any, you know,
Snake oil, as they call it.
Exactly. It's still, you know, there's a piece of my product that I am not actually manufacturing. So that in itself, like, still kind of throws me off a little bit. You know, I still have to have a trust element for one piece. Granted, they are only coming from one place. I've seen the facilities, have been there, but I'm somebody that I stand by. I made this. I put this together. I know what's in it. That is a tougher piece. Explaining to townships what you're going to be manufacturing in their town is always an interesting conversation, especially for, you know, the lady at the front desk in the mayor's office that's never heard of hemp before, or what is CBD, you know, or anything like that. Those are always tougher conversations, because that mayor trusts that lady. You know, she is the gatekeeper to that person, whomever it is. So being able to explain that in a way that is digestible to someone who has absolutely no knowledge of it, or their understanding of it is from a very illegal standpoint, and why are you bringing this to our town? You know, those are conversations that are lengthy, but that's where you have to have the most patience. My friend Saint and I were talking outside for just a moment before we came in, and I referred to patience as a muscle, and you're going to need to exercise it a lot. Because you are going to run into folks that don't understand, and you know, it may take a minute to get your point across about what it is that you're trying to do, and really just be patient with that. So the manufacturing piece, just where your materials are coming from, who's handling them, how they're processed, and then once you put your spin on it, you know, you hope that it comes out exactly the way, you know, you want to. Okay. Finding a space to work out of that will allow you to do those things can also be a challenge. Like I said, I'd gone through like 6 different kitchens before I was able to actually find a place. Okay.
So our next question will be for Rose. Once again, to remind you all, she's a lawyer. She has her own firm, and aside from the other law that she practices, cannabis law is also something in her repertoire. So we're going to ask you, does cannabis federal status impact the enforceability of contracts? And I'll repeat that in case you guys didn't hear. Does cannabis federal status, so the federal government, what they're doing, does it impact the enforceability of contracts? So whether you're in New Jersey, which has a medical program, or you're in New York, which we're playing games, or you're from Colorado, how does the federal government make it as far as applicability and functioning for specific states?
Sure. So I love that question, by the way, because a lot of people do not know this, but there is this concept in contract law, and it's called the doctrine of unclean hands. And basically what it says is you cannot go to a court to enforce a contract that's based on something, an activity that's illegal. And so whenever you do that, it will get bounced based on the doctrine of unclean hands. That said,
1 minute. Did you guys understand what she said? Okay, could you say it one more
sure.
time?
So under contract law, there is this doctrine called the doctrine of unclean hands, which basically states that you cannot go to a court to get them to enforce a contract that's based on an illegal premise. So right now, cannabis is federally illegal. And so the idea comes into play, can you enforce a cannabis contract? The federal government has, even though it's illegal on a federal level, the federal government has taken the position that as long as you are legally compliant with the laws of your state in which you're operating, they will not seek enforcement action against you for violating federal law. That would be a criminal type of case. Usually contracts come into play, breach of contract and those types of claims. That's more of a civil type of action. Mm-hmm. It has not been tested on a federal level that I'm aware of, primarily because you can't really operate outside of your state. Mm-hmm. So there's really no occasion where you would have contracts cross states. You can't get product from anywhere else. Exactly. And so right now you're dealing within the confines of your state. And so on a state level, as long as it's legal in your state, yes, these contracts are enforceable. So if you have a lease, and as long as everything is, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and your landlord understands what the permitted use is for, and there's no bar based on the lender, for the property or anything like that, that is an enforceable contract. On a federal level, hopefully, we hear this all the time. We're hearing, there is legislation pending where they're looking to decriminalize and take cannabis out of the controlled substance, right? It would no longer be a Schedule 1. And so at that point, all of this would sort of fall to the wayside, and all those other hurdles that you have with like 280E and tax deductions and things like that, that would all disappear. And we hope and pray every day that this does pass.
Okay. Good question, right? Good answer. Okay. Did you have a follow-up question, ma'am?
Yeah, so you're talking about the tax purposes, so if it's illegal, are people getting taxed for it? How does that even work? How would that work?
So what happens is under 280E, you're not allowed to get the types of deductions that normal businesses would, which is a problem. So basically you after your cost of goods, that's it, you have no write-offs. You can't write off. And so what happens is, it's really sad because it forces these companies to find creative ways around this. So a lot of them set up, management companies and things like that to get their employees paid and to get other services as a deduction through a management company because they can't through the plant touching company. It's absolutely ridiculous that they make you go through this. The other thing is, because it's federally illegal, you run into obstacles getting banking. Some banks will not touch you.
We're going to segue right into that.
All right, so besides the banking, there's insurance. There's a lot of things that are barriers to people because of the federal illegal status.
So our next question is going to be for Carl. So he has a finance background, and a lot of our speakers spoke about getting capital. How do you start your business if you're not blessed to have a lot of influx of cash? So we have a two-part question for you, Carl. One, with traditional financial services largely off limits to cannabis entrepreneurs, can you talk about some financing options for people who don't have access to large influx of cash? That's part one to the question.
Part one.
Yes.
So there's always the good old-fashioned way, right? Go to your family and friends. Goes right back to what I said earlier. Don't be ashamed of what you do. Be confident. And pitch your business to everybody because you don't know who somebody might know. So there's always going that route. Go to your friends and family. Tell them what they want to do. I'm not going to lie to you. That's how I started. I sat down and I told my sister and my father exactly what I wanted to do. And They looked at me like I was crazy. And granted, neither one of them have a lot of money, but you practice your business pitch on everybody, because the biggest way to really go about it, if you can't bootstrap your own company, is to go after, equity investors, and go after investors that can come in and help you out. Like I said, we've all said it when we sat up here, building your team is very important, and that finance part of your team is extremely important. So you have to go every untraditional route you could think of by speaking to friends, family, pitching your business idea to them, getting a team together strong enough where, listen, you might not have $20,000, but your buddy might have $5, you might have $5, you might have $5. It's time for you guys to go get an LLC. Put that money inside of that LLC. Invest into your buddy's business. These are the ways that you can go about financing your company. You might not want to be a plant-touching business where you want to own a dispensary where you're going to need $1.5, $2 million. Maybe you want to start an ancillary business and you need $50,000. You go through a couple of your friends and family. You get everybody to put money into an LLC. You get your contracts taken care of. You get the paperwork done properly. And that's how you can help finance your business. Or you go after private equity investors if you are looking for those dispensaries, if you are looking to do a cultivation center, if you're going after those big ticket items where you need 2, 3, 4, up to $10 million or more. Yes, you need to go after private equity investors, and that comes into knowing your numbers. Know what you want to do. Know your business plan. If you don't have a business plan, put one on paper. You know what I mean? Start looking at your financial projections. Start doing your research. I spent hours and hours reading about California and Colorado's numbers and what they did annually as a state and what companies were doing, because I needed to know exactly what my numbers were going to look like if I wanted to apply for these licenses. And only that, and being confident when you go and pitch to these investors, it's like Shark Tank. They want to know, what is their return on investment? Now, how are we going to make money by, you need 10 million. Cannabis companies can burn through cash very quickly. A lot of these large companies are operating in the red right now. So investors are doing their due diligence and looking at their numbers. So if you don't know your numbers, it's going to be very hard to get that finance partner to come on board and hand you a very large sum of money.
Okay, so part 2 to the question. Let's say you started your business, things are going great, you have your LLC, you've decided what ancillary business you want to do. What do you do with the money? Where do we put it? Are banks accepting our money? What's happening?
See, that becomes very tricky. If you want to be a plant-touching business, if you want to be a plant-touching business, if you operate in a dispensary, it's very hard to get traditional banking. I haven't. Luckily, what we saw with the passing of the 2018 hemp farming bill and the legalization of CBD or hemp-derived products, there are some banks that are coming around to working with CBD-only companies, and they do their due diligence, these banks. With my finance background, I'm working with a couple of banks right now in the state of New Jersey on programs that they need to put together to help bank cannabis companies or CBD companies. They're very particular with that. They will do their due diligence. They will make you submit lab tests for the products that you are selling. If you're a manufacturer, they will make you show your lab tests for every stage of your process. And they want to know who's involved in the business, where you're selling these products, where you're getting the products from, where you're storing it. These banks get very nosy. So there are very few that will work with companies. There are some credit unions that will work with cannabis companies. So there are options out there, but you have to do your due diligence. Luckily, there's some safe banking acts that are being passed around Congress right now that we might actually see the federal government, lean off and lay off of banks if they work with these cannabis companies. So we see some of the language in the legislature out there, but it comes down to us as communities and advocates for this industry and this plant to call your elected officials, get on the people that you need to get on, and tell them we want this. We want this industry here as citizens of this country. We want this stuff here. We need to make it easier for the companies to operate, because these companies are the ones that are supplying the consumers.
Vince, did you have something you wanted to add? And then Rose, you can.
This is a fun topic.
It is.
Yeah, because this is a tricky one even for me. Even for my CBD company, I still do not have banking. And I have gone through the process that he's describing with submitting every stage of testing. They want to know what my blood type is, what I like to do on dates. They want to know everything. And they still are just like, all right, well, we'll let you know after we hear back from our underwriting team, and kind of go from there. And then there's going to be another round of questions and more documentation that they want to see. My experience in Colorado with some of the dispensaries and how they do banking, I've seen a couple of different ways. Not all of them are Some of them operate deep within the gray area. I have helped one of my dispensary owners put away about $15 million in a safe room where he keeps cash, and this was his take-home money. This is one person's money. Some dispensaries will have LLCs that don't necessarily look like they would be a dispensary name or anything like that, and that is where their cash passes through. What I'm describing are really just gray area loopholes. You can find creative ways to get your money in a bank. You have to be very careful about the denominations that you are depositing and withdrawing, and be a little bit vague. These are practices that are still being done right now. Even with Safe Banking Act stuff coming around and some banks, willing to work with you, those banks can charge whatever fees they want to charge you for said business. So I like to go about things honestly and disclose everything so that there's no surprises and I don't run into any hiccups with my business and how money is passing through. So I'll tell them whatever they want to know. But those are some things that, those options do exist, but it's not always necessarily a clean way of doing things, but that's just my experience.
And Rose, you want to add something?
I was just going to add, if there's any surefire way to have a ton of doors shut in your face before you even start, it's to set up an LLC with the name Canna, Weed, 420, say that you want to open up a dispensary. It's sad, but it's true. And so that's why it's important that you talk to an attorney before you set up your company. You don't ever lie about what you're doing, but there's ways to get through the door and then figure it out later. Because the fact of the matter is, if you open up an LLC tomorrow with the intention of applying to be a dispensary, it could be months and years down the road before that happens. In the meantime, no bank will give you a bank account. An insurance company will not insure you, but the ones that will do it at these exorbitant premiums. And so you're already, locked into a box before you've even opened your doors. And so, we always tell our clients, you can set up a holding company, and when you get to the point where you're ready to open a plant-touching business, you create an entity for that. It's wholly owned by the holding company, and then now you can actually work within those confines. I've had clients that have had their bank's accounts shut down just because there was an article that they wanted in the future to open up a dispensary. Not doing anything plant touching, hadn't even applied, but literally just because of that. And I've been through that, where the bank calls you to verify every transaction. It's like a 40-minute call, and they literally ask for everything under the sun, short of your blood type. I mean, it's really sickening.
Wow.
And so it's very hard to do business that way. And so there's ways to do it the right way, the legal way, with and preventing some of those obstacles before you get to the point where you're plant touching.
Okay. I have a question for you, but did you want to add something?
I just wanted to add, like she was saying, it's very difficult to do it any other way. And I wanted to kind of jump on what he was saying. Having the right information as far as what you want to do in this industry, and applying that to where it's like, for instance, financial institutions that you want to work with, you have to have a clear and concise understanding of what you want. And like they were saying, if you're truthful about what you want and just don't embellish, don't go over the top, just keep it simple, you're more likely to get, the assistance that you need. I think the dog agrees. But yeah, so what was your question?
Okay. So aside from Supreme Green Cuisine, Saint is also a lobbyist. And the reason why we decided to include him on the panel is because I think a lot of times people don't think of lobbying as a viable option to getting into the industry. Everyone shoots right to dispensary. After dispensaries, farming, so why do you think, one, that lobbying is often overlooked, but then can you also speak to the importance of lobbying?
Definitely.
Women of Color in Cannabis, we try to lobby as often as we can, and we will be doing bus trips to Albany. We've done 2 in the past. We'll be doing more in the future, so be on the lookout for that. But Can you just speak to the importance of lobbying, why
Well,
it's so important?
Why it's so important. I wanted to kind of go in reverse like you had originally asked.
Okay, that's fine.
I think I want to talk
Why
about
it's
why it's so
overlooked.
overlooked.
Okay.
In my opinion, I believe why lobbying is so overlooked is because our communities don't have the education on cannabis, like in general. Like they don't, it's more of a taboo. There's more of a, oh, weed, oh, cannabis. Like we call it weed. We don't, some of us don't even call it cannabis. And the legal term is marijuana. So it's like, we have so many different terms, and those need to be understood in the community so we can start to create we can't create a narrative without understanding. So I think that's why a lot of the time it's overlooked, and then you have the allure of, I want to open a dispensary, which is like millions of dollars, and it's like, it doesn't connect. Like people aren't connecting that laws need to be passed in order to start business, in order to conduct business, not start business, conduct business properly in America, in your state. So I think that's why it gets overlooked, because people are kind of looking too far, and they don't think about the logistics. You know, they don't think about the first step. And why it's so important is because, one, it creates a real community of people, not just corporations that are thinking about a dollar. So they'll cut corners and they'll do anything and everything just to make their means pass. And that means paying off senators. I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
yes, you can. We sling shade here at WOCC.
I mean,
okay?
but
You know,
investing,
so we're gonna tell you the
sponsoring,
truth.
investing, and that's just a practice that's gone on for too long. And I mean, if you're going to invest in someone, the legislators should invest in the people. The people should invest in educating the people that are going to be sitting in that seat. And the only way we do that is by creating these forums like this, and we sit down and we have a conversation like, what are we going to say when sessions opens up? We want that MRTA passed. What does it really look like? Is there something in the MRTA that we don't like? Let's make sure we
Can
kind
you
of
let
clear that
everyone
up.
know what
Yes.
MRTA stands for?
That's
just in case?
marijuana taxation and regulation. Did I say it right?
You switched it.
Yeah.
Marijuana Regulation
Reg-
Taxation
Taxation
Act.
Yes. And basically, that's a lot of stress around that, because
Yeah.
it's like they don't want to put it with the alcohol committee. They don't want to put it with tobacco and alcohol, and they keep comparing cannabis to alcohol, and it's like there's so much confusion in conversation because people want to line their pockets. I don't want to say that, but I do want to say that. And they're lining their pockets in their imagination, because reality is communities need to be wealthy, you know, and that's the only way. That's the only way the wheel's going to work, you know. Consumers need to get fair shots. They have to have fair understanding of what they're consuming so they can consume it, or else they're not. Because one person has to get sick off of it, and Chipotle's done.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not something that's going to happen too often, where people are going to follow something just because just because corporation says you're going to follow it. We have the internet. Like, people have their phones out right now. You can sort out information on your own. It's just now we have to collect it and force it in one direction and educate these legislators. They sit there, they get a lot of stuff on their table, but we need to put on their table what we want, what we need, what we have on our calendar, or else they'll just let it go. That wasn't too much.
Yes, and then we're going to have one last question for each of the panelists, and then we'll open it up to you all if you have any questions, and then we'll go eat downstairs. Okay.
I just want to kind of piggyback why lobbying is so important. There's a lot of big companies throwing a lot of money at their own agenda in terms of lobbying. And the culture, the people sitting in this room, we need to do the lobbying, because we're the ones that get left behind in a situation like this, where we have a budding industry, pun intended. This is brand new. This is like John Rockefeller finding oil. Like, this is brand new. And our communities are so undervalued and so utilized in this industry, and we don't have our fair share of it. We don't have our piece of the pie. That's one of the reasons I think lobbying is so important, because we need to make sure that there are avenues for expungement. We need to make sure there are avenues for minorities to own equity in this industry. We have been severely punished by the war on drugs, and cannabis in particular. You know, I'm in New York. How often was the smell of cannabis used as a stop and frisk means? You know, oh, I smell weed on you.
A cigar in your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, you're carrying a Dutch. Oh, hold up. You know, and now all of a sudden, our communities are getting sent to jail for just carrying something that they might be using for their own medicinal purposes.
Yeah.
We need to make sure our voices are heard in this industry. We need to make sure that our representatives, the people that we put into office, see our faces at these meetings. It's very important. This industry isn't all just about getting into it, selling cannabis products, and being able to educate people. I love doing those things. I love being able to see people lives change when they use their first CBD or cannabis product. I love that, don't get me wrong. But I also want to make sure that my community is served properly, my community is represented properly. We put these people into office. They need to make sure, we need to make sure we're doing the groundwork and the footwork to make sure that they see our faces.
That's right. I just want to real fast, and in that understanding, because there's been way too much social injustice overall in so many industries. Cannabis, this is the newest one. This is where the focus is at right now. So we really need to utilize all of the things that we've been through. At the same time, merge them with business, because you're talking to Mr. Monopoly. You're speaking to someone who only understands. They don't care about what was done and the things that happened. They made their dollar. You know, they made their industry continued. So finding that medium of knowing financially what to say, just creating this great business plan. We know why we're in here. All of the people in this room are of color, people of the sun. And the reason why we're here is because we want to have a voice for and a support system for our industry, for our personal businesses, and for our industry collectively. Harmony is always going to create a great space. I mean, that's music, you see this here. And I just want to say that when you go towards lobbying, when you go towards creating your business, just have that sentiment in mind. Don't be afraid to share what you're doing. Right.
Okay. So our last, did you want to add something?
Just very quickly, having no ego, or as little ego as possible as you approach this and get into this. I will tell anyone anything that I've been through, what I've worked on. I'll tell you how to make a tincture. It doesn't matter. I'll tell you anything you want to know. At the end of the day, you are the one who has to take action on it. There are going to be plenty of people, there are plenty of businesses now that make the exact same type of product I do. May not be the same particular quality ingredients, but they make the same exact thing. What differentiates you from them? There are going to be plenty of people who come up to you like, how did you do this? How did you get into this? Tell them. Talk to them about it. You might change someone's life. Not everyone is willing to take that action. They might just be asking just to know, but there is nothing wrong with just like, this is how I do it, this is what I do. Shit, if you want to come with me to my kitchen and see how I do it, I'll show you. Ultimately, you still have to go do the work. I mean, I put in 12 years of my life to get myself to this point, and I'm still just getting started. You know, there are many things that I haven't encountered yet, but the things that I've gotten through thus far help me to keep, pushing through. But I'll tell anyone anything. So no ego, I'll help anyone. So that's it.
So our last question for Rosemary, if you can do any kind of like blanket legal advice, and her contact, everyone's contact information is here. So if you'd like to follow up, they do have their emails, and we encourage you to reach out. And to hire these people, keep the dollars in our community. If you're going to get a lawyer, why not a woman of color? If you're going to start your own product line, why not work with a person of color? So it was important to us that everyone that we have here are people of color. So as you start to plan towards your businesses and your entrepreneurial endeavors, these are people you should be speaking with and hiring and working. Everyone wants a free favor. That's not fair to ourselves and the people that we're going to partner with to always expect things for free. So it's like you help them, you pay for their time, their expertise, you're going to see that return in your business. That was my little plug for you guys, sorry. But yes, the last question is any legal advice, free legal advice, blanket advice that you would give to everyone in this room as you're going to think about what kind of business they want to get into. Just some standard, this is what you should be thinking about. Pens and pencils out.
So just to touch upon further what I said before, obviously the most important thing is setting yourself up right from the beginning. We get clients all the time that will come to us and, I don't need you to set my business up. I already set up my LLC. I already did this. I already paid Rocket Lawyer to do a 7-page bylaws. That means absolutely nothing. It's very important that you set up from the very beginning the right way. And like I said, primarily because if you set yourself up as a plant-touching business, or it looks like you're going to be a plant-touching business from the start, you've already created obstacles that you didn't need. So talk to a lawyer. Yes, you could get an incorporation done, through LegalZoom or whatever for cheap. But in this case, you really do get what you pay for because they don't understand. I've seen the quality of things that come out from these things. It's not worth the paper it's written on. And then what happens is we have to file amendments, and it costs you more than what you would have paid just to pay us to do it right from the beginning. So talk to a lawyer. We give a free 1-hour consultation before you even have to hire us. Let us know, do your research first and foremost. Make sure that you know what you want to do. We also get a lot of people saying that I want to get in this business, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I want to do. Try to have some sort of focus because that helps us give you the proper advice in a short period of time. But if you are ready to start and you want to do something that is plant touching or even an ancillary business, make sure you're set up properly from the beginning. So take the time to talk to the lawyer. Make sure that you've set up your business the proper way. If you're going to take on investments, there is a way to do that. It's not just like you take people's money and then that's the end of it. No, there's securities notices that need to be filed. Even if you're doing a Reg D, which is, one. I'm sorry. No, there is. At least in the state of New Jersey, you have to file one form just to let the state know that you're taking on money, even though you're a closed corporation. So make sure that that's all formed properly. Make sure that if you're an LLC, your operating agreement, if you're a corporation, your bylaws are set up to take on investments. Otherwise, you're paying money to get a form document that then needs to be revised, right? Make sure that you have a business plan. I cannot impress that upon clients enough. Clients come to us and they talk to us about stuff, and they have all these great ideas, but they don't know how much it's going to cost. They don't know where they're going to get the financing from. They don't know how they're going to implement it. And so it's a lot of nice things that sound nice, but how do you present that to an investor? You have to have a business plan. And please, don't cut corners on your business plan. You're never going to convince someone to invest millions of dollars in you if you have like a grade school business plan. It just doesn't work. And I get this a lot too. So take the time, like he said, sometimes you really got to spend a little to make it back. Take the time. Those are the things that you need to invest in. Invest in your legal at the beginning and invest in your business plan, your pro forma. Make sure that everything is tight because that's going to make the rest of it easier down the road.
Okay. So our next question is for Saint. So aside from his lobbying work, he does have Supreme Green Cuisine. And I would say, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, after like dispensary and farming, I feel like infusing is usually like the go-to for a lot of people who want to get into the industry. So with infusing meals on the rise, what advice would you give chefs or people who are just interested in infusing, whether it's food or drinks? What is some advice you'd give to them entering this industry?
Because I've done it with every single thing that I do is research, study it 3 or 4 times over and over. R&D is the dopest place ever. Like, be in research and development at all times in your mind and physically. Like, don't be afraid to take a little material or distill it and waste it because you have to learn. You don't want to create something that is going to make somebody sick. You can over CBD somebody and they get a stomach ache, and it's like no one wants that experience when they're consuming something. Even when we think about just basic medicine, how we consume it and what it tastes like, what it looks like is pinnacle. So how you are putting your cannabis or your any type of THC or CBD, CBN into your food, infusing it, you want to have that conscious mind of amount. It's just an ingredient. You don't want to overdo anything. If you want someone to have a certain experience, you have to break it out into different dishes. You can't put it all in a quiche. You can't put it all in like a macaroni and cheese and then make, I mean, you can, but it's just, you want to create an experience. Food is an experience. That's how you become nurtured. It's, you have to, you don't just swallow the whole sandwich. You take a bite. So with that idea, that's how you want to create in micro. Microdosing is the best thing ever, guys.
Could you explain a little bit what that means for
Yes,
people who may not know what microdosing is?
Yeah, I definitely can. So microdosing, I call microdosing, it's like the first date almost, because it's your it's learning your relationship with cannabis. Just take a little bit, you know. Traditionally in my neighborhood where I grew up, we would smoke blunts. So we would overconsume and we'd think that that's the norm. We'd set our standard there. Once I that sounds bad. Once I've gotten off of cannabis for a while and fasted, and then started to apply it in small doses in my life, because I had to do that with food. I couldn't be smoking as much as I do and have such a high tolerance, and then try to test food out and just go off the numbers. I have to know how it feels as well.
Yeah.
It's very important. So you have your mathematical breakdown, but your senses have to be on point. That's what we're in. You could hear me right now. That's your sense. Your sense is working right now. So make sure that when you're engaging into anything that you're creating, that you just have a clear space. You have a space that you only know and that you can gauge, so you know when something's burnt or overcooked or there's too much THC in it. You could smell it by the notes if you're working with flour. Distillate's different, you know. But education is the most important thing because there's so many different levels to this now. It's not just flour. Some guys don't even decarb. So decarboxylation is when you, well, should I go into that right now? 'Cause that's
Should he go into that right now? Then yes, by all means.
All right. So decarboxylation activates THC to make it psychoactive. In a nutshell, you would do that at a certain temperature. Traditionally, it's done at about 235 degrees for about 60 minutes. There's a niche in there where you can find it just right, but the reason why you're decarboxylating at that temperature is specifically for THC. You can do it for other molecules within the plant because there's other molecules. There's CBN, there's CBE, there's just a variety, to which when we get this taxation law passed, we can get some money behind it, some more education behind it, so we can start talking about these calcium-enriched molecules inside of cannabis. But getting back to decarboxylation, it's important for me, I think, when I'm working with directly infusing it into honey, because I know where it's at. Like, I don't want to guess and not decarboxylate and then it just activates and I don't know what it's doing for the individual. And that's just me personally in my own work. But some guys have said that they don't decarboxylate. So there's different levels to it, why I mentioned that. So educate yourself with everything. Study it. If you want to be in this realm, it's just like walking and talking. We sat there for a minute and we watched everything around us. We listened to everything around us. And then we applied ourselves. Do that.
There's a part two to the question.
Go ahead.
So because infusion is on the rise, I think we all have noticed that in the industry. How would you, or what do you recommend to people who do want to do infusions to separate themselves from the groves of people who are doing dinners and brunches and lunches and drinks and cookies and edibles? How do you differentiate yourself and your brand?
Okay, that's a really good question. That's almost like a freestyle right now because, like for me, with anything, I think our best quality of self is just being true. The thing that you love the most is the thing that you should be going towards because you know it. You know, like it's like Michael Phelps. He stays in the water, like, you know, and he does it proficiently. And the way his technique, the way he swims, there's other ways to do it. But keeping a solid technique. If you're gonna stay in the lemonade game, be the best lemonade maker. Find out different lemons. Find out alkaline. Just find out anything you can about it to give yourself a niche in it. Fall in love with what you do. Don't just make lemonade. Fall in love with it because then it'll start to serve you. And when it serves you, then it's obviously serving other people, you know. But yeah, if that answers.
Yes. So our next question is for Carl. So Green Passion Industries, aside from the services they provide, they are education-based, which means, and they're based in New Jersey, so if anyone is from New Jersey and has friends in New Jersey who wants to do actual hands-on training, Green Passion Industries are the people for you. So two-part question again. One, how did you get into the training aspect of everything? And two, what would you say is the skill set that, or just some parts of a skill set that you find it's very important for people who want to work in a dispensary or in a farm environment?
Well, we got into the education side of it primarily because when I originally approached Jonathan with going into cannabis in general, he looked at me and the first words out of his mouth were, we are going to need to re-educate everybody. There is such a stigma on this plant that, you know, we need to do a better job of touching the community so that they really understand it. So that was something that we preached walking through the door when we said we wanted to get into the industry. Was we preached getting the communities the information that they need. And Jonathan was at a event where in New Jersey, Senator Ron Rice, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and one of the assemblywomen were at, and they were speaking about how important education was, and Jonathan asked them the important question, well, what are you guys doing about putting education into the legislation? What are you making sure is happening so that the communities are getting this type of education? We were fortunate enough to be approached by a school based out of Newark who asked us to come in and help them develop a curriculum to help train, the individuals of their retail sales classes, the skills that they might need to work with patients, to work inside of a commercial grow facility, or to trim flower. So we started to put those things together, and we worked with that school back in June on a class where we brought in some of our partners that have worked inside of dispensaries, have worked on grow operations, and we were able to actually give these people an opportunity to touch CBD flower and hemp flower and trim it and learn some skill sets that they would need to work with patients. And this is going to lead right into the second part of what are those skill sets that are really needed. If you want to work inside of a dispensary, the first thing I'm going to tell you, you should be passionate about working with people, especially in the state of New Jersey right now where we have a medicinal-only program. So you're working inside of an alternative treatment center. These people are coming in for their medicine. You need to have compassion. You need to have passion in general, that you care more about that person getting the right product and the right service than you do about the dispensary or the ATC making money. And and
Tons of patience.
And patience, absolutely. You need patience, because some of these people that are going to walk through that door know nothing about cannabis at all. And they have anxiety, and it's going to be overwhelming for them. So there are going to be moments where you need to sit down with that person and work through their panic attack before you can even speak to them about the product that's going to help them with that panic attack. So you need to be passionate about working with people. It's the number one skill set, I would say. If we're fortunate enough to apply for a license in New Jersey and gain it, that's going to be the most important thing I preach to people that work inside of those dispensaries is, if at any moment you feel yourself getting worked up with that patient, you need to take a step back and you need to remember why they're there. And if you want to work inside of a cultivation center, I would say attention to detail is going to be very important. A grow master and his technicians or her technicians that work underneath them.
I like that you said that.
Well, it's very important. I think it's very important to point out that women, and I know I'm sitting up here with 3 men, so I might get hit because I'm sitting between them, but women have a very strong opportunity in the cannabis space, and it's very crucial that we have more women inside of the cannabis industry.
Yes.
Exactly, because this is a plant. This industry needs to be nurtured, and we all know women nurture things better than men. I'm just going to put that out there.
Put it in the box.
It's very important that women get into this industry. So back to the working inside of a cultivation center, that attention to detail is extremely important, because one plant becomes hermaphrodite and starts pollinating other plants, you're running the risk of destroying a lot of raw material. So attention to detail is extremely important inside of a cultivation center.
Okay. Vince, so a lot of people think that THC is the only cannabinoid in the plant, that it's outside of it being most predominant, which it is, they think that's their only avenue into getting into this business. But Vince is a hemp distributor. So why hemp? And where do you see hemp in the next 3 to 5 years?
Whew, okay. So I'm going to sit these drinks on the ground. So, why hemp? For a number of things. Hemp is, let's see, how do I start with this? Hemp has way more avenues that you can apply things to than cannabis does. Cannabis is a limited number of tricks for that pony. For now, hemp, textiles, foods, oils. I mean, you can make biofuels out of it. That's something that I have had a diesel car for a number of years. I have made my own biofuel and run my car off of it. It's from hemp oil. Packaging, plastics, all those things are renewable, biodegradable, biocompostable, whatever you want to call it. There's a huge, massive, market space for it across a number of different sections. So, yeah, hempcrete building materials. Actually, my office is out of Kearney. There is a guy there who builds massive 3D printers, and he can actually 3D print a house out of hempcrete. Wow. So it's like and it'll do it in a couple of days. It's a massive piece of equipment that grades out your land and plots everything, and it does it with a bunch of lasers and stuff. It's like watching, Star Wars. It's just build a house, press a couple of buttons, and go get something to eat, and your house will be done in like 3 days. Like that's, and all that stuff can be made from a plant.
I think Satan had a question
I have a
concerning.
question for you on that. So now, how long does that last in the world? Because it is biodegradable. Like, do
So,
they treat it or something?
There are some different mediums that they put into it to make it become a concrete-like consistency. I'd be lying if I said I had all the knowledge on that. Since that's not entirely my wheelhouse, I know that it can be done. I've seen it, but I'm not the guy that makes it. But I do know that hempcrete itself is moisture and mildew resistant, fire resistant. I've seen people beat hemp bricks with a hammer, and it'll make a little indentation, and you do that with a cinder block, and it'll break into pieces.
Yeah.
It's
So like
crazy
air,
strong. Yeah.
There's a lot of air inside the concrete, but then hemp kind of like hemp just binds.
Yeah.
Like what it does for your body.
Yeah.
Endo, like.
It's it's a tremendous thing.
Yeah, it is. It's really dope.
And where do you see hemp in the next 3 to 5 years?
Where do I see it going?
Because, okay, this is why I'll explain a little bit about the question. So when we talk about this business in the cannabis industry, you always hear billions of dollars projected, billions of dollars projected, billions of dollars projected. And not to discourage people from wanting to get into the THC game or even the CBD game.
Yeah.
And you can get hemp derived from CBD and THC.
Sure.
So for right now, and the purpose of this panel is to get people to think about alternatives for right now. Since we're in that gray area, since we're not completely legal, what can you do now to kind of get your feet wet and get some experience? And that's why I asked the question, why not hemp? Hemp is legal. Why not learn how to use it? Why not get that business experience now and take the next 2 to 5 years getting really legit, getting your paperwork? And I think Rosemary even spoke to saying that you can kind of plan for the future of kind of, structuring your businesses so that one day you can enter the THC game and the CBD game. So thinking of hemp as a viable option for right now while we're still waiting. So where do you see, as far as in comparison to where you see THC in the cannabis industry in 3 to 5 years compared to the hemp industry in 3 to 5 years?
I'd say in 3 to 5 years,
Did I stump you? No, I'm joking.
yeah, it's tough because in my time in the cannabis space, like things have evolved a bit, and then there are things that have stayed stagnant. Farming of hemp is great, and if you own some property and you can farm hemp, that's awesome. Being able to process it into a number of different things is where you have some changes. I would say, over the next 3 to 5 years, prepare yourself for something that is that the industry really can't go without. Packaging is a huge one. Here's a free business idea for somebody. Get into plastics, specifically hemp plastics. If there's something you want to learn how to do, start small in your house or a safe space to work in. Learn how to work with plastic polymers and so forth, and how you can get that plant to become plastics and make packaging for it.
That's free.
That's one.
He's not lying.
That's one.
That's a multi-million-dollar business idea.
And actually, if you will allow me, I'm sorry. One thing I was going to say once Vince answers that question, something that I tell my clients all the time, and it's really important, if you want to be plant touching, right, and your ultimate goal is to have a dispensary or a cultivation or manufacturing license, or even to be fully, vertical.
Stop you right there. Can you explain what fully vertical means? Because I'm not sure people may understand what that means.
Sure. So a vertical operation is an operation to do all three. So you cultivate, manufacture, and dispense, right? So you have your plant, you can process it, in multiple ways, and then you sell it. But irrespective of what you want to do in that plant touching industry, business, eventually, depending on it, especially if you're in a competitive state like New Jersey, New York, it's all about the points, right? And a lot of those points are based on experience. And unless you're partnered up with some MSO, which most of them don't need to partner up with, they only start to partnering up with locals when they need minorities,
Diversity
certifications.
points.
You know, they're trying to get their points that they're missing, right? Because they're mostly white men, you know, white corporate America. So unless you're fortunate enough to partner up with an MSO, you need to have that experience. And so what I tell my clients is, if you've never been in this business before, start doing like a CBD business. You know, do some hemp. You don't have to manufacture your product. You can white label, but at least you have, you know, years of experience operating, you know, a business that you can show on an application that you have experience. At the same time, you know, it wasn't so much of an obstacle this year during the application round, but last year you had to have 3 years of audited financials and 3 years of tax returns. And that was a tremendous obstacle for somebody that created a company just for this purpose of applying for an an ATC permit. So get into the business any which way you can, because any experience is better than no experience. And, you know, hemp and CBD, because the fact, you know, now it's federally legal and so, but anticipate that it's also a nascent business and there's going to be a lot more regulation coming down the pike. And so just get ready to start pivoting when that happens.
That's where it gets tough to answer what could happen in 3 to 5 years, because the powers that be. Hopefully, you guys understand what I mean by that.
You can say what you mean.
You know, our government.
Yes.
They essentially, you know, decide how things are going to go, and it's usually based on, you know, someone's special interest or who they paid to make sure things got curved that way that benefit that you know, giant corporation or whatever else have you. It's hard for me to answer how the industry is going to move over the next 6 months, you know, let alone the next 3 to 5 years. But I would say really just, you know, keep what you're working on as fluid as possible, but you know, and be able to pivot a bit, because you never really know what's gonna come down the pike with that.
So we're done with questions. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Yes. Hi. Could you speak a little bit louder?
I said, my name is Cynthia. How are you guys?
Hey, girl.
I will apologize because I was walking my dog and I didn't have anywhere to put him, so I had to bring him.
No, it's fine.
No problem.
He's chilling now.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, it's fine.
What's your dog's name?
King.
Aww.
What's up, King?
And so my question is that, so we mentioned all these powerhouses, these, you know, white men who are taking over the industry, right? And they have the money already, and this is something that's starting to move, and it's going to move quickly, especially in New York City. There's so many people of color who've been on the ground doing the work for so long, who just don't know where to start and don't have those resources. So if we're not fortunate enough, which I wouldn't even say fortunate is the word, because we don't want to work with those powerhouses, how do we work as a collective to try and bring in some money to get things on the ground and moving now? Because I feel like there's a sense of urgency, because if we don't move, well, like we as a people who have been doing the work don't move on it now, then there's limited spaces, there's development happening throughout New York City. Like, in order to do this, space is really important as well, and
Just some dispensaries right now. Yeah, I mean, that's the medium for when they did. Sorry to cut you off, but you know how we I mean, that's the answer, is how we have to get together. Yeah. But we have to get together on a clear idea. Not like, hey, come on, let's go put something together and we're going to make it, sell it. And like, no. You see everything that you've heard today, like, you definitely have to have your legal together. And if you're going to have your legal together, why not do it with some people you identify with that truly want to move in the direction? Baby steps.
right.
Go ahead.
Absolutely right. And so what I was going into is there are all these opportunities for workers cooperatives, and are there opportunities to kind of use those worker cooperatives? You said there's this term of vertical integration, right? How can we work together? There are some people who are, you know, in the food industry. There are people who can manufacture. There are people who can sell. There are all these types of people in this room right now, right? How can we have discussions around worker cooperatives? How can we have discussions with each other after this
You wanna
and
hit that?
say,
Yeah.
oh, where are the resources and, you know, how do
Can I just answer really quickly before you guys answer?
Oh, you got your own mic.
Testing. So, for one, we've included, and hopefully I wasn't too presumptuous when I did this, so forgive me, but we included all the panelists' email address. And I would say one is reach out. Rosemary mentioned that, you know, her firm does do a 1-hour free consultation. Our email is also listed on our business cards, and I would say to reach out. We do these once a month, and this is just a panel style discussion, but our meetings are usually more hands-on, where you walk away with what we call lesson plans, and it's like step 1, step 2, step 3. So we do them, so we're going in order to make sure that we hit everything. So we're actually going to start with Green Passion Industries, but we'll be doing a training. So you'll literally end the training with, you know, hopefully some kind of certification that you can now take to a dispensary or a farm. So you're actually going to have that skill set. We have other meetings that will come in the future where we're going to do lobby days. So if you're specifically interested in lobbying, we'll bring you to Albany. We'll introduce you to the people who are already doing this great work, and you can do it through there. I do events. My partner does drinks. He does events. So if you ever wanted to shadow myself, my partner, or anyone, that's something that we're also doing. We're in talks with other farms and businesses, including Vince's business, to offer internships and externships. It's going to be a very small, you know, but like 4-week, 6-week program, but we are developing those relationships. We're developing relationships to get people who look like us into these businesses doing these externship program, because as everyone said, it's about the skill set. Yes, we want equity, but we don't want people hiring black and brown faces for the sake of hiring black and brown faces. We want everyone to be highly knowledgeable. So what we're doing is we're educating, and then once we're educating, we are pushing you to companies. Like, oh, you need black and brown people? We have them, and they're trained. So we're kind of, I don't know who said it, Saint said it, we're kind of the how, but we're not the only ones that exist. There are other organizations that are out there. So I would say, you know, we do. With the ones that really do something, not gonna lie, there's a lot of organizations that do exist, and we wanna walk the talk. Like, it sounds really good to say we're going to do all of these things, but it means nothing to me if we don't do these things. So we work with organizations that do these things, not people who say, yeah, we're going to help you, and then don't really help you. So we do partner with the organizations that are worth partnering with. So everyone here is worth partnering. Yes. That's my partner, Patricia, as well.
Other organizations in this space that provide information, that have networking opportunities. We highlight them all. But we are definitely here for our community. It is why we were founded, it is why we are doing this, because we don't just want to talk about diversity, we actually want to be a diverse body.
And that's why we're meeting here in Brooklyn. We could have met in Manhattan, you know, in what people call the hood. We have access to spaces.
Kinda nice
we can be in Soho if we wanted to. We can, like, we have people who reach out to us and want us to come there. But it's important to us that we're highly accessible to the people. When we say black and brown and minorities, like, we mean that. So we're going to be meeting in every hood, and not until we've monopolized every hood will we step over there in Manhattan, because it's very important to us to service the people that look like us. But you guys can also answer, yes, how to get the skills.
Just going back to what this young lady was saying, and then you adding on, but serious connections, not just advocating to say, hey, we're here, and then it's hollow.
Yes.
I work with an organization called New York City Normal. There are other organizations of normal around across the country. I think due to demographics, they have their own certain ideas. But New York City, we have a very eclectic group of people. We have a lot of say-so in this state. So there's going to be a very wonderful collection, because we have the WOCC that goes up there and advocates and lobbies, and they are not just up there saying we want to pass cannabis law like they don't understand. They're speaking like, no, we want to pass cannabis law so we can continue business the way we deserve to continue business, because we've been disserviced. But not like, you know, there's just a specific, like I said before, there's a specific narrative that you have to have, and you have to have like these community relationships, true community relationships, that through the fire you guys work with each other. So, I mean, just get with your community.
Yeah, so full transparency.
Yeah.
I'm just getting involved, and so I'm just asking questions because I'm really just trying to learn more about.
Absolutely.
And know your local.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, know your local politician.
Right. Right.
That
Indeed.
as well.
You have to know your local politician, because if you have an issue, you should go speak to them about
Directly.
it over and over, because they're not going to hear you the first time. No offense. I mean, maybe 1 in a million or 2 in a million, but over and over, there's a lot of things that's going on in their realm and agendas that they have for themselves. So you have to thread yourself into it. You are the community. You're one of the votes. Now grab 10 people with you and have the same conversation, and they grab 10 people. That looks like a group of people. Look like 100 people already, and that's 100 votes, saying the same thing. Saying like, if you don't listen to us, you might not be in office.
I'm sorry. Before you ask your second question, did anyone else have a question?
I got it too.
Okay.
So my name is Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
I'm actually a teacher. I'm actually going back to law. I'm a scientist originally. And
Okay. Wait, I just want to say, don't be opposed to lab sciences.
No, I'm not.
Okay, because there are, like Vince mentioned, there are a lot of there's not a lot of labs actually. There's a very finite amount of labs that are actually recognized and are legally allowed to test people's products. So I would say that's actually a very good niche for you to get in, and especially as a black woman. There's not a lot of black scientists in there testing CBD and, THC. So just think about it. Just think about it.
But right now, I'm a teacher. So
Okay.
and I teach in the hood. I live in the hood.
Yes, yes.
I love the hood.
Okay.
But my students, again, like you said, we started off smoking blunts. I started off smoking blunts. The idea of the taboo that this could be like a new Facebook. Like the idea of cannabis for us, because we are the most affected by it. Our men have been the most affected by it.
Yeah.
I have too many of my friends.
I know, right?
Right. So how is it? Can you guys do more of that high school outreach? Because it's my kids that.
So this is the issue. The Board of Education, it's tricky to get into a school with minors because technically, outside of most seniors, everyone's like, 17. If they're not minors, we're not opposed, but we do more community building. So we would really love to work with you as a teacher to get the kids to come here. Would we come to the school? Not so much. Just because schools start to get really finicky, and then that's how you open yourself up to high scrutiny, and we don't want anyone to derail us from our mission. So we are not opposed to speaking to, students, but we definitely want their parents' involvement. We definitely want their parents to know what's happening. We definitely want their parents to join them so they can see the content of the conversation. But we would really would require you or anyone who wants to partner with us, if any of you want to partner with us and see what we have on the schedule and see how we can work together, that's fine. But we just need somebody to be the middle person, because once you mention cannabis in certain places like churches, schools, hospitals, they're all like, I don't know.
So my kids, the skill set you're talking about.
Yes.
My kids' skill set.
Yes.
How are they able to think about getting to Plan B, because they all want to make $1 million. Right?
Yes, yes.
And they all think they know weed because they smoke it. But how do you get them to see the steps? And I think that would be so beneficial for my students.
So follow us on Instagram, and you'll see all of our meetings. But I guess we can announce it now, guys. Do you want to announce it? Should I announce it?
You can announce that.
Okay, I'll announce it. So we have Green Passion Industries, and they mentioned that they partnered with the school in New Jersey, and they were able to do certification. Well, we are bringing them to Brooklyn, guys. So next month, September, we picked a date, but I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's going to be the last Saturday. It's going to be a 6-hour training. Usually our meetings are free, but these guys are going to give you a lot of information. They're taking a lot of time out of their schedule, and like we said, it results in a certification. So this will be a paid meeting. We're going to have the payment information on our website and our Instagram, but I would say that is step one. If you have any seniors who are interested and they just want to get that training, we're going to cover a variety of things. Like they said, how do you speak to patients, because we call them patients and not custies or customers, if you're from the hood, so talking to them, learning actual product knowledge, right? Custies, I brought it back. Product knowledge, talking to what is CBD, what is hemp, what is THC, microdosing, getting familiar with those terms. So we encourage everyone who maybe you definitely want to work in a dispensary, you definitely want to work in a farm, or you're not sure, why not still take the class, get the certification, and just have that knowledge. So that will be happening next month in this space as well, and it's going to be 6 hour long. It is going to be paid, not to scare nobody, it's going to be like $100, but it's definitely worth it because it's like 6 hours of information, and it's hands-on, it's plant touching, you're getting the knowledge, they're doing skits, top-notch guys. So I think I would say step one to seniors, because I look at it like a trade. There's people who decide to do, carpentry instead of going to college. So you know, this is a nice alternative. Like I said, there are not a lot of farms in New York, but, well, New York City, but there are, like, you know, around the Binghamton area, Oswego area. So it is something to get people to think about. So that will be happening next month.
And I just want to piggyback off your question. If you're a teacher and that's something that concerns you for your students, you need to speak with like-minded teachers. You get enough of your like-minded teachers who think that same way, and you guys approach the Board of Education. You guys are their backbone. The Board of Education is built off of you, off the teachers. You guys are the ones who are touching these students day to day. You're the ones who are teaching them. If this is something enough teachers feel that these students should start getting access to, and by access I mean access to the education and the information surrounding the endocannabinoid system, you know, as was mentioned, everyone only thinks of THC. There are over 100 different cannabinoids inside of the cannabis plant. So we're only talking about maybe 2 or 3 of them. So yes, this isn't just information. This is information everybody should be getting their hands on. But teachers should approach the Board of Education and ask them what are they doing to prepare the students for the future. Because where do I see the industry in 5, 6, 7 years is it's going to probably be offering a lot of jobs, and we want the people to know what they want to do. You know, when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a cop, and now I'm sitting up here and I'm in the cannabis industry. You know, but back then, all I knew was, I wanted to be a cop when I was like 5 years old. Well, back then, all you knew was, you were a cop, you were a lawyer, you were a doctor, you were a firefighter. You know, the world is much bigger than that. We have you.
So, I wanted to be on. Did you have your second part of your question? And this is going to be, unless someone else has a question. No? Okay, so this will be our last question, and then we're going to wrap up. And we're all going to go downstairs and have our complimentary snacks. Feel free to ask any more follow-up questions, not only to myself, my partners, but the panelists as well. And their wonderful partners as well. Okay, so what's your last question?
So, yes, full transparency, I have worked for a political office. This is my first meeting, and I grew up right there in Brownsville. And that's my community, that's Brownsville, and that's focus right? And so the reason why I mentioned work with cooperatives is because there's so many men of color who are on the streets, on the ground, who look to selling marijuana as a way to make money. And a lot of these trainings that are being offered are not trainings that are affordable to the average person who's in these public housing. I grew up in public housing. There are OSHA trainings that these men are trying to get a hand up, and they can't because it's not free, right? And so when I speak about workers cooperatives and working together, the reason why I say that is because there's opportunity, there's funding, right? And there's opportunity for you to get funding through the city, opportunity to get funding so you can create a more open space for these men of color, women of color, people of color, who are the ones who have been on the streets doing it for the longest to get more involved. And so when I speak about this, I really speak from the heart, because this is like people that are my family, right? And I want them to get involved.
Can you collect funding? Do you know how to access that funding?
So there's a worker cooperative. So once you form a workers cooperative, there are opportunities. There's going to
just apply, right?
People, yes, there's going to be opportunities in the city budget for workers cooperatives. So that's the reason why I'm mentioning it, because it's important to kind of think about funding in this, because there's always going to be opportunities for funding now moving forward on the city level. I think that's what I think. So that's the reason why I'm mentioning it.
And this is the last thing I'll say before I ask everyone to come downstairs. Please invite your, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
That's King.
She don't like you. Please invite your, for lack of better terms, your hood friends. Like, we are very serious when we say that we are here to service our communities. We want to get them off the corners and into the legal cannabis industry. Like, we want to get their grandmothers on board. We want to get their baby mothers on board. Like, we really, every person, no matter if they've graduated high school, if they're in college, if they're thinking about college, wherever they are, we do not judge. We're all about sharing the information. So please, like, I try to invite everyone that, I see on the corner, and I know it's going to take some while for them to make it in here, but please be that person in your community. Like, our meetings are free. Outside of the trainings, everything else is free. We have some lesson plans that we can show you downstairs what they look like, but we print all the information out. We circulate it for free. We are going to start doing office hours where you can come here. We'll be here certain days out the week where you can just ask us questions and we'll help you guys with your business plans and whatever. But it's very important to actually get people into the building so that they know we exist and they know that we have these services. So please, like, next month and the month after that and the month after that, let them know this is our standard location. We'll be here this week is the third Saturday because Labor Day and I'm Jamaican, so like I couldn't be here. But next month it'll be the last Saturday. It's always the last Saturday of the month. It's always 2 to 4 p.m. so you can get drunk, wake up, throw up, get dressed, and still make it here at 2 o'clock. So share the message.
Wrong, so I had to wake up at 9 o'clock.
Oh, girl, I'm sorry, but thank you for being here. Okay. No, and we do it, we plan on branching out, but we just want to make sure that we have a really good starting off place in Brooklyn before we be too ambitious and we try to do too many things that, so it's important for us to have a really good place in Brooklyn. But please, everyone that you see in the hood, in your neighborhoods, your friends, your families, let them know that we're here because we need to share this information.
Next
All right.
month, not only are we having our meeting, we are also going to be participating in Expungement Week.
Yes. So if you have any arrests on your record, I completely forgot. If you have any arrests on your records, please let us know. Yes, the entire week of the 22nd to the 28th. We'll be here. We'll have lawyers here. We'll walk you through the process of getting your record expunged. We'll teach you what courtroom to go to, what does the paperwork look like, things like that. And we'll also have office hours as well. So you can ask us any questions. Oh, yes, I have it. I have it. I'm prepared. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully you learned a lot. The snacks will be downstairs. And thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Did you have fun? Okay. Yes. You guys can just go right down.